This video is brought to you by Samsung. Last month, I visited California to visit Samsung's audio lab where they design and test their soundbars and TV sounds. And I was truly impressed, from the anechoic chambers to test their TV and soundbar specifically, to customize rooms to mimic customers' sound rooms. And despite having an anechoic chamber, they also had clipple measuring system there as well, which was truly impressive. And if you want to watch that video, make sure to click on the link description below. I will have the link there for you to watch the full video. Definitely worth a watch, especially if you own or plan to own Samsung products, because it has a lot of relevance to what you will be experiencing. But as for me, I went to the lab, I experienced it firsthand, I saw the process, I saw the facility, and I was impressed. But now it was time for me to test their products in my entertainment room. So what I have here is the 90C Samsung TV. This is the QLED series. And Samsung sent over the 65-inch TV so that I can use it with the Samsung soundbar, and they work together. And we'll talk about that in the later part of this video. But first, I just want to let you know that I actually owned a Samsung TV in the past, the 80T. You can see it mounted just behind the 90C. And going from the 80T to the 90C, the improvement is pretty massive. First of all, the brightness is incredibly enhanced on the 90C. The 90C gets super bright to like eye-bleeding levels of brightness. If you're living in a space where there's a bright light coming into the room, you will have no problems with this TV. It is quite bright. And I personally feel like the color is much better on the Samsung 90C. Well, I wouldn't say much better because the 80T was still a very good TV to me. But the 90C, the color just pops more, and again, you can do the calibration thing where you calibrate the TV with just your, phone and the Samsung SmartThings app, and you have a calibrated TV, which just enhances the color to match the space that you have. Every room has different lighting, different, kind of lighting hues. So you want to make sure that your TV is calibrated so you're seeing the right colors, and Samsung makes that easy through this calibration process. And as for the sound, straight out of the box, the TV itself sounded pretty darn good in my room. And that doesn't surprise me one bit because I saw the process with the customized anechoic chamber and the painstaking process Samsung goes through to make sure their TV sounds good as it should, even against the wall or close to the room boundaries. So to me, it was not a surprise, but what did surprise me was the soundbar, the Q990C soundbar system. Now, this is a 11.1.4 channel system, which means that you have total 11 front-firing speakers, 4 up-firing speakers, and 1 subwoofer. So with the purchase of the soundbar, you get 2 rear channels, and of course the soundbar itself, which fits perfectly under the TV without covering any screen, and then a subwoofer. And the beauty with this system is that it all connects wirelessly. The moment I hooked up the power to each of the speakers, it was just all connected wirelessly without me really having to do anything. And this was huge convenience. And I didn't get excited about this feature when I read it online, but when I actually had it in the setup process, which literally took minutes, then I started to appreciate it way more. Because truthfully, if you have set up a home theater system like myself, you are running long lengths of cables, sometimes going through walls. There's a lot of hassle, headache, and the setup process can be daunting, especially if you're just getting into this. So for you to be able to connect any speaker wirelessly, hang it up on the wall, put it wherever you want without worrying about cable length and running through cables and cable management, you know what I'm talking about if you ever set up a home theater system. Just the management and getting all of that out of the way, because all of these speakers connect wirelessly, is a huge convenience and something that is overlooked often that is truly appreciated in this case. And coming back to the soundbar and the surround speakers, let's talk about the drivers in this. So you get 2 drivers on each side of the soundbar, so 4 in total, that fires to the side so that you get that kind of bouncing wall effect. So it feels like there's a speaker there, even though there isn't any in-wall or on-wall speakers that I have inside the room. And then you have, of course, the 3 front-firing speakers or drivers, and then you have the 2 up-firing drivers on the top of the soundbar. As for the surround channels, you obviously get a front firing driver and you get a side firing driver as well. And then you also have a up firing driver as well on each of the surround speakers. And last but not the least, you obviously get a subwoofer with this setup, which is just awesome because if you want to have a true Dolby Atmos cinema, any kind of a cinema experience, you do need a subwoofer because that bass becomes very important. And with all this in combination that connects wirelessly just out of the box when I just hooked it up and just tested it out, honestly speaking, the sound without me doing any settings or tweaking or anything like that, just setting them up and then playing it, it was already pretty immersive. I mean, just out of the box, it sounded great. And so I was pretty happy, but to get the full benefit of this system, you can do a few things here. And especially if you're paying your hard-earned money, then why not use these settings to make sure that you're getting the best sound possible? So here are a few settings that I went through to make my experience just that much better. The first and probably my favorite ever kind of feature on this is the Q-Symphony. The Q-Symphony essentially allows you to use these speakers inside your TV, and it does have to be specific selected Samsung TVs like the 90C, but the Q-Symphony actually also works with my ADT Samsung TV that I bought a few years ago, and it actually worked pretty well with it. But working with the 90C in Q-Symphony, it basically allows the TV speakers inside the 90C or your selected Samsung TV to work with the Samsung Soundbar system to give you an even more immersive sound experience. And I feel like this feature should be turned on automatically if you have a Samsung TV. But unfortunately, you do have to go to your settings and turn it on. And I say you should just have it on all the time because this gives you a more immersive sound experience. And me going from no Q-Symphony to Q-Symphony was like, whoa, like this went from great to excellent, especially for the same money I paid. I didn't do anything. I didn't pay extra money for it. It was just a simple feature that I had to turn on. So if you have a Samsung TV or plan to get a Samsung TV with this soundbar system, definitely consider turning on that Q-Symphony setting. And speaking honestly, before I set up this system, the soundbar system, I had a 7.2 traditional home theater system in here that I removed to get this system set up. And I had that system for about a year and it's like pretty expensive. I spent upwards of 10 grand, 10 G's on that system. And absolutely, honestly speaking, the Samsung soundbar system blew it away. And I did not expect that. And you might be going, well, Jay, obviously you're comparing a 7.2 channel to an 11.1.4 channel. There is no comparison here. And you're absolutely right. Except in this room, it is impossible for me to get an 11.1.4 channel without going through crazy on-wall or in-wall speakers, cable running through, drilling holes, going through a renovation process. It's going to be a nightmare for me to even stick that many speakers in here, let alone the possibility of it actually working well in my space is almost impossible. So in instances like mine where you are in a smallish to medium-sized listening rooms where you don't have a lot of flexibility to have multiple 22-channel speakers all around you and ceiling speakers and side speakers to have a true 11.1.4 channel or even higher amount of channels, this allows you to even have that in the first place in a more compact package. So before looking at the system without me having it here to physically experience it myself, my question was always, well, does this actually compete with the 11.4.1 system that is truly a home theater system with individual speakers, in-ceiling speakers, and so on? And my answer to that has changed a little bit. The answer is, well, it may not, but it doesn't really matter if it does or not, because if you're in a situation like mine where you can't even have 11.4.1 channel because your room is just too small for that, or it's just too inconvenient, you don't want people to be knocking over speakers, or your family members don't want ceiling speakers or speakers inside walls mounted, and all that kind of stuff, then this becomes a compact package that allows you to have 11.1.4 channel Dolby Atmos without the space constraint. Now, SpaceFit Pro is a feature where basically it analyzes the room and then each speaker basically adapts to the room. So just like how we calibrated the screen to adapt to the room, you're now doing that with the sound. And in traditional home theater setups, you're doing this with an AV receiver through you get a mic and then you have to set it up at specific points and then you have to calibrate it. And while a lot of home theater enthusiasts know how to do this, well, it's just much easier in this case because you just turn on the setting and you're done. There is no mic involved, there is no fiddling around or expertise needed. So the fact that this is all automated to a point where you don't really need an expertise to do this or have someone else do it for you, you just literally go into the settings and turn on this feature and it adapts to the room. It just makes everything so much easier. And again, it's a feature that you don't pay extra for. Now the next feature I love is adaptive sound. And if you realized, every setting that we have talked about in this video is mostly adaptive, meaning your screen is adapting and being calibrated to your space. The sound is also being calibrated through SpaceFit Pro to calibrate it and match your space. Same thing here, except now this is adapting to the screen scenes. So if your dialogue is at low volume, then it will increase that so that you can hear that better. And this became super helpful when it came to those movies that the dialogues just are recorded so quietly while the explosion and the sound effects are just immensely louder than the volume of the dialogue. And I personally love and adore this feature because I no longer have to crank up the volume to hear the dialogue and then crank it down really fast because there's a huge explosion happening, and then you keep doing it until you just give up and then decide to read the subtitles. Yeah. Personal experience. And again, what's impressive about this adaptive sound feature here is that it doesn't just work at louder volumes, you can get this to work at even lower volumes. So at nighttime, I would have adaptive sound on so that I don't disturb my neighbors and I can hear the dialogue clear and the sound effects won't be overbearing those dialogues. Obviously, there are other settings like surround, which I use to watch movies where I don't need adaptive sound. And then we also have game mode, which I am absolutely in love when I'm playing games. Also on the SmartThings app, you can go into the advanced sound settings and then check out the advanced options. I tested all three in my space and the bass enhancement was the way to go. It just added just a little bit more oomph and a little bit more of that, low end energy so that I felt like I was in a more of a real cinema. And obviously this is going to vary, like you might want to keep this down if you're in a smaller room than mine. And then if you want to even increase it higher because you're in a bigger space, then that's where EQ also comes in, where you can actually increase the woofer or the EQ on the bass even more to kind of allow for that bass to come through in a bigger space as well. But personally for me with EQ settings, I didn't use it much for movies. I just like the overall settings, and when I played around with it, I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna keep it at 0. But where it did become useful is in music playback, because I can tune the bass or treble to however I like, and depending on my mood, depending on my taste in music, depending on the music I'm playing, and I could just tone down the treble or increase the treble or increase the bass or decrease the bass. So this became handy when I was playing back music and I wanted it to sound a specific way. And plus the sound of the speaker itself, the soundbar and the surround speakers seem to be pretty neutral. So the sound I get without EQ is, from my perspective and my opinion, completely flat. So it's very neutral, and therefore when you increase and decrease treble or bass, you have a good starting point instead of having a speaker that is V-shaped or U-shaped or whatever, so that it might be actually harder to EQ to your taste. In this case, you're starting with basically a flat canvas, so it makes the experience a lot easier to EQ, even if you're someone that's not used to having EQ'd before. Now, in terms of the overall musicality of the system and how much I enjoyed it, well, I obviously enjoyed it very much, but I know the question people are going to be asking is, how does it compare to a standard 2-channel stereo system, because obviously a system like this is more affordable than a stereo hi-fi high-end 2-channel system. And my experience is that, well, honestly speaking, it is not an apples to apple comparison, because yes, there are certain magic with 2-channel. I still believe in that, and I obviously will continue pursuing 2-channel because it has its own magic, it has its own thing. But so does a surround channel system, Dolby Atmos system like this, because some music that is recorded for Dolby Atmos or surround music can't be played back in stereo without you covering your ears because it just sounds so bad. When it comes to Dolby Atmos mixed music or music meant to be played in a surround system like this, that's recorded and mastered and mixed for this purpose, when you play those tracks, that is an experience that you cannot mimic with a 2-channel, and that's just that. Like these side firing channels and up firing channels are firing into the wall and bouncing back to your ears to mimic as if there is a speaker on top or on the side when there isn't a speaker actually there. So that kind of experience is not something you get in a traditional stereo setting. And I remember reading Dr. Floyd's book, and Dr. Floyd Toole, he did an extensive research with speakers and measuring system and so on. And I remember him saying basically that, to have a true real life experience, you can't get that with 2-channel system. You have to have multi-channel. And I agree. I agree if the recording is meant to be played in a surround channel, multi-channel setup. And that's kind of what you get here. You get an ultimate experience of that surround channel Dolby Atmos sound that you really wouldn't get from a 2-channel. So again, it's comparing apples to oranges. I still love my 2-channel. The magic there, that like when I'm listening to music, that's what I listen to. However, if I'm listening to surround channel music, Dolby Atmos music, then this is what I'm going to be listening to. But again, that's not to say 2-channel music sounds bad on this. It doesn't whatsoever. It sounds actually pretty darn good. It's just that, considering the price, it sounds pretty insane, considering that it's a soundbar that's compact for your entertainment space that plays music this well. That's pretty insane. But again, it doesn't compete with high-end zillion-dollar 2-channel systems, but at the same time, they do compete with pretty expensive hi-fi speakers or studio monitors for that matter. We've seen it. They compare it with Genelec surround system that costs way more than the soundbar, probably like 20, 30 times more. And they A/B it back and forth until they feel like they have done a really good job with a soundbar, getting very close to that studio sound. And I did it myself, and I was truly impressed with how close the sound was, despite the fact that the price and the form factor was just on a different playing field. A soundbar system like this shouldn't even technically be allowed to compete, but it did compete, and I was truly amazed at how the difference was so close, despite the fact, again, the form factor and the price difference. Yeah, so as an audiophile, I looked down on soundbars before, I have to admit. And not just because I'm an audiophile and a snob, but also because I didn't have a very positive experience with soundbars before. But really going from my over 10 grand 7.2 channel to this that costs a fraction of the price, this is staying, by the way. I'm getting rid of my 7.2. So that should speak volume on how much better soundbars have come and the effort Samsung has put into a soundbar system like this that everyone can enjoy the sound quality of. And you can bet more soundbar reviews coming on this channel from now on, going forward. So that's it from me. I hope this video was informative, fun, and entertaining to watch. And if it was, please click that like button. It does help my channel out and it doesn't cost you anything. And I truly appreciate it. And of course, as always, make sure to subscribe, share, do all that kind of stuff. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Until next time.